Everybody here? All right.
Okay, so let's start off with everybody just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why this topic is so important to you.
My name is Morgan Slanina. I am currently a detective with the Rapid City Police Department. I've been with the department for 6 years. I am currently assigned to investigate sexual assaults and child abuse. Being a part of the police department is very important to me because if you would have asked me 6 years ago if I would ever think I would be in law enforcement, and I would have laughed right in your face. Like many of us that have talked up here, life experience just kind of hits you in the face, and it's very important for me to be a voice for people who don't have a voice, as well as to take experiences that maybe somebody had that was less than ideal with law enforcement and be that change. So anytime I get, oh, you're a law enforcement officer, that's so scary, I don't like that, or my grandma always says, oh, I don't want to hear about work. I just remind her that on your absolute worst day, which is usually when I meet people, is on their worst days, it's very important for me that I am that person that is there to tell them what happened to you is not okay, and I'm going to do everything I can to bring justice for you. So,
Thank you.
Good evening. I first want to thank everybody that put this on tonight. It's wonderful, it's informative, and it's uniting. So I just want to say welcome to Chichiapi for this wonderful event. My name is Norma Rendon. Lako Echiapi Wachiampi we Oglala Imata Hapai Sinte Awatie. I'm originally from Oglala, but I live in Porcupine now, and just want to greet you all with a warm handshake. I started grassroots organizing around domestic violence in 1977. I was a victim, and I guess that's what leads us there. But as with most Native women and men, our victimization began in boarding school. So we have a long history with this. But I do want to, my mashke here does a coffee thing. If you guys didn't get any, go get it. Choke cherry coffee, the best coffee I've ever tasted. And she does wonderful work. But I do, on her coffee bag, it says, say her name. One of the things we do is we say a woman's name 4 times. And I think the first woman ever trafficked that has had national acclaim is Sagakawea. So I'm going to ask you to say her name 4 times. Sagakawea, 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 Sagakawea. She was a beautiful woman. She was a part of making American history. We all know the plight that Lewis and Clark did was long. It was arduous. And they could not have done it without her. And her husband sold her and his baby to Lewis and Clark. And guess what? Lewis and Clark purchased them. They bought them. But nobody ever seems to give note to that. And she was not only was she sex trafficked, but she was labor trafficked. And it says in their documents that she never received a penny for her work. The majority of the time, she fed them. She hunted, and she fed them, and she cooked. That would never have happened without that woman, that brave woman. So I always like to commend her and remember that she lived in horrible conditions. There was a friend of hers that also the same husband sold her too, and her name was Otter Woman, and they were friends. It did not last. Otter Woman didn't stay for very long. She ran. That in itself tells me that it was horrendous for Sagakawea. So I want to remember her. I am with Wicha Uoniha Oyanke, where all women are honored. I started this organization in 2018. I worked for Changleshka before that. I've been in domestic violence and sexual assault for many years, since 1977. So it's a personal thing for me. And there's one woman that I remember that I don't even know her name. I wouldn't know her if I saw her. But she was a victim at Holy Rosary at the time when I was in kindergarten. And I always think we feed the homeless on Thursday. I'm always hoping that I'm feeding her. I'm hoping that she's alive. But through all the trauma she experienced, I know she's having a hard life. So I really want to thank our young lady sitting in the front row when she talks about our houseless relatives and how she helps them and supports them. They've had a very traumatized life. And so thank you, my girl, for doing that. But we feed the houseless relatives on Thursdays. And we do it part because we want to make a difference. And they help us find the missing and murdered relatives. Because if there's somebody missing, they know. They're the ones that know. They know everything. But they won't share it unless they trust you. So that's part of it, and the other part is my own personal journey of hoping I'm helping that woman somewhere. So I think earlier in one of the talks, people talked about how it's personal for us, and it is. So we'll be la chichapi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. I'm Lily Mendoza, and I'm the founder of the Red Ribbon Skirt Society, which was founded in 2016. And this work, and it's not work, we volunteer, everybody in the society. It's hard work. We always say it's hard work, but it's really hard work. It really affects us. And I started doing this, just doing some research on MMIW, and found out that what a lot of the families were experiencing were things I was experiencing as far as a loss. And so I just really kind of committed to the movement. And there are several of the Red Ribbon Skirt Society members here in the room. If you could just kind of maybe wave, that would be great. Okay. We have 30 active members within the Rapid City area, and then we have about 15 young girls in Minneapolis. And we have people across the country that seek us out to learn about the movement and how they can help as well. And I'm so glad that Norma remembered Sacagawea, however they say it different ways, because she was one of the first women that was trafficked. She was one of the first women that, well, there were a lot of our women that were taken from colonization. And that's where it all started. And as we go look back at our history, and as I've done a lot of research, they're members of my family. You know, women in my family that were taken, they were victimized. And it still continues to happen in this country. And so I am dedicated to this work, as are my children and my grandchildren. And it's really important for me. I just had a great granddaughter. So, and she's 4 months old. And so for me, hopefully, by the time she gets to be a teenager, a teen, that we can somehow fight this battle and bring those numbers down. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
My name is Ashley Wasserberger again. You're probably sick of hearing from me, but I'm from Working Against Violence Inc. I'm the education director there, so I do a lot of our prevention work in the community. And what we do is we work with survivors of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, sexual assault, stalking, and human trafficking. We do work with all genders, all ages, and we have a shelter just right down the street across from the library. We do case management, financial assistance, we have an attorney, we respond to Monument Health when someone is getting a forensic exam, making sure that they're supported during that. We provide support during court cases, for criminal cases. So lots of different work. I'm probably forgetting a lot of what we do, but we really want to stand for, kind of like you said, right? Hopefully being unemployed. We want to see those numbers come down. We want to see that we're creating a safer community. And first, we want to make sure that we're lowering the stigma so that survivors know this is not your fault. There is someone who believes you. We believe you. There is work and services out there. There are people who can help. And getting people to realize they're not alone and they can reach out for that help, and then making sure that we're creating that safer community to make sure that people aren't further victimized and our community becomes safe.
So the one thing that struck me when you were talking and you talked about that not only were they sex trafficked, but they were labor trafficked. And I thought to myself, well, that is the history of women, right? Labor trafficked, not paid. And the colonialization absolutely plays into a part of it. And I think that that's something that people might get a little nervous to talk about, but I think it is so important to understand where we are as to where we've come from. You know, like we, Liberty and Justice for All, received a little pushback for this event. We were told we were being too political, and well, we talked about it, and I said, I don't know what to do when you were talking about women's equality. How did that become political? How did that become a party conversation? So I just, from my deepest heart, to come say thank you for coming here and talking about that and framing it in such a real way that we all can understand it no matter what our background is just so very important. Before we open it up to the audience, because I would love to know what you want to know, and I want you to ask them questions and we'll hear from you. I would like to hear from our police officer. We brought you here to help us with predator alerts and knowing how to stay safe. And so before we get too far down the journey, I would love to hear from you and have you share that with us.
So I think one of the biggest things that we talk about in law enforcement is one of our biggest and best tools is our gut, it's our intuition. And obviously we all have those. So my biggest tip and my biggest takeaway I want is to trust yourself. If you feel like something's not right, it's probably not, right? And I think we can all say we all have kind of learned, especially in today's day and age, we're all super sensitive to different things. And so we've talked a lot about our bodies and how, you know, the energies and things. And so I think it's super important just to remember that if your gut is telling you something's off, it probably is, right? I think some of the other big takeaways is in today's day and age, we love to share. We want to share our favorite coffee shop. We want to share what our grandkids are doing. We want to share it all. But unfortunately, that stuff really comes back to bite us at times. So I, as much as I love to share what my little daughter's doing, like anybody else, I want to make sure you know, relatives far away can see it on Facebook and that kind of stuff. Being able to really stop and go, who do I really want to know this information is pretty important. And so just kind of keeping those things. You see it a lot. I know I saw quite a few posts on social media lately with back to school, you know, kind of telling you, hey, maybe you don't need to share, you know, where little Johnny goes to school. It's okay to say, you know, oh, he's starting elementary school. Here's his first day of school picture. Or, you know, even sometimes delaying those posts. It's okay that you don't have to share everything in the moment. And that's hard because that's not what we live in. Everybody wants to know what everyone's doing and be involved, and it's super great when it works awesome, and it can be really devastating when it doesn't. So that's another great tip. Obviously, people with young kids, or even if you're caring for your elders, unfortunately, there's a lot of scam these days. I just had somebody call me today and say, hey, do you have access? I just got a call that I have warrants And I'm sure we've all seen it on the news or heard it on the radio or seen it on social media. Somebody called and said, hey, you have warrants, I need you to stay on the phone with me. We'll get these taken care of. You just need to go to Walmart. If you could purchase some Xbox gift cards, scratch off the back and read them over. And it's so sad, but these people are so good. If they could just use their powers for good and not evil. But they're very good at preying on your emotions. So things, just taking that extra step to go, if you're getting, a letter, if someone's calling, that kind of stuff. Stopping and going, okay, wait a minute, let me just assess this. Asking questions to those people that call. A lot of people, they're really good at preying on your emotions. And so stopping and going, okay, hold on, can you give me some more information? They're gonna give you, my name's Joe Smith. Okay, well, I'm gonna hang up and I'm gonna call back to, a trusted Pennington County number, that kind of stuff. Taking those little steps, always calling us. We get so many people that say, well, I didn't wanna call and bother you. That is literally our job. We are literally here for you to call us, ask us questions, get information. If we don't know the answer, I can tell you, I don't know everything there is to know about stuff, obviously. But if I don't know, I guarantee you I can find out somebody who will and provide you that extra information. So those are just a few little tips. Again, biggest takeaway, go with your intuition and self-defense classes.
And where can we get self-defense classes?
There's a lot of different places. I mean, you can look at like community centers. You can call into jiu-jitsu, boxing, that kind of stuff. I know we're in Rapid City, but I think Box Elders just put on some sort of event for women's self-defense. So just take an extra 10-minute drive over there, they do that kind of stuff. I know we've talked about maybe trying to get some female law enforcement officers to do some stuff, which would be super fun, but I'm gonna dance
Or,
around that.
maybe just have men not.
Right, yep,
Just-
absolutely,
just put there.
absolutely.
Well, and so I think that's what's so important about this conversation is that we have to talk about how we got here. We have to talk about the fact that we were taught that we didn't have to be paid for our work or that we were less than. I mean, literally until 1920, women could not vote. And we didn't get there without Black and Native women leading the way. So that needs to be said, and that was really well covered in our first annual, not annual, but our first.
Inaugural.
Thank you, inaugural Women's Equality Day. We covered that really well, how Native and Black women led that way. And then the white women, we finally came in and helped, and I don't think we've done enough. We're not far enough. We're not far enough when we're having to fight the battles our grandmothers fought. We're not far enough when we're fighting tooth and nail for health care. We're not far enough when we're still having these conversations. So it's just so important to really talk about that and to really own that. And I digress. I want to hear from you. What would you like to hear about more from these wonderful, talented women? Yes.
First of all, I just wanted to point out that 1920 was really great because women were given the right to vote, but it wasn't until 1924 that Native Americans were granted citizenship. And then it wasn't until 1950 that Native American women were allowed to vote. So I think we just need to keep that little bit of history. Thank you.
100%. It wasn't until the 1970s Native American people could practice their own religion, as I understand it, which is still mind-blowing that we are still here today having these conversations. So, Renee, yes.
Well, I just needed to point that out, but I wanted to say to Norma, I really want to thank you for you being so strong and present in this community because where all women are honored, as far as my own experience as an advocate, I'm a volunteer advocate for a lot of my, the women in our community that don't feel safe or they don't understand where to go when it comes to addressing their violent situations. And Norma is probably one of the most active and provides the most direct services to the actual victims and their families. And their program is like a navigator program where they just go through all the little steps that, because I'm a survivor. And I remember not having that, not even knowing where to start, much less what the next step was, and then the next step and the next step. So I just want to thank you, Toby, for doing that. But my question is for the officers. In this past year, twice, I've stood with women. One of them is my daughter, as they were reporting their abuser. And with my daughter's case, I heard the threat, I'm gonna beat the F out of you. And I'm on the phone with the police officers and had my work phone listening to their conversation at home. And as I'm racing to the house, I'm calling the cops. So we get there and I tell them, and I confront him because they had him standing outside. Thankfully, the officers got there right away. They had him standing outside and I told them, I don't want him here in my home anymore. He doesn't live here. He's just staying here, he's visiting. I don't want him here anymore because he said this. And he says, I don't give a F. You know, 3 officers in front of him. So I walk inside my house and I hear the officer saying to my daughter, who's got bruises on her cheek and on her arms, because he was doing this to her arms in front of their infant child. And I heard the officer with my own ears say, well, it looks like it's mutual because he's saying that you threw a sock at him. So if you press charges on him, we're gonna press charges on you. We're gonna have him press charges on you. And my daughter backed down, she shriveled up like a little crumbled up piece of paper. I have never believed F the police more than I did in that moment. And I think that the Rapid City Police Department needs to understand that it's those type of situations that create that type of sentiment.
And is there a place, if that happens, people can report such interactions?
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And we did it all. And guess what happened? That's policy. So that tells us as advocates, as survivors and victims and people that are going through the process step by step by step that you're gonna come across that wall. It's policy. In Rapid City, that means it's not gonna change, you just have to live with it or die with it.
Or we have events like today.
To try to change it, and we need to talk to legislators.
That's really great, but we're talking about real, like today, right now it's happening. This moment it's happening. We're all nice and warm and clean in here, but right now there are some young people out there who are hurting so bad. And guess what? Those abusers, they know now, they know that as long as they say, well, she did this to me too, that's gonna just ease it. It's gonna take it off of them and they're gonna be able to walk. So when I asked the officers, can we just tell him not to come back to my home because I don't feel safe with him in my home? Well, no, we can't. He has a right to be here. If he stayed overnight, if he was staying here with you guys, he has the right to be here. So my first inkling was to just grab myself, my 2 sons, my daughter, and my granddaughter and move out of that house so that we could be safe. And I'm telling you guys, this is something that needs to be addressed, and I don't know how many places that I take this to and I say this to, and I'm trying to find a place to make something happen, but there's always, well, it's policy. So who do we change the policy with? Because these events aren't where we change policy.
Well, that's right, these events aren't, and we are on a time clock, and we did run over about 5 minutes ago, but I do want to say we should have a conversation and see if there isn't something that we can do to work on that policy and how to teach people how to protect themselves.
What is it?
Well,
So just, obviously I wasn't there, so I can't talk, I don't know what these officers were, why they were saying that. That's just because he was there overnight, that has nothing to do with it. South Dakota established residency is 28 days, so there's no reason that they should have said any of that. So I'm sorry that you had that experience, that's not gonna change anything, that's not gonna help you. But all I can say is that's why I became a police officer, because I don't want those interactions to continue. I can't change what those guys did, I can't change what the next officer is gonna do, I can change what I do. But we can absolutely have a conversation so that, off stage, that we can go back and revisit that complaint, because you're right, If that's what was said, that is not at all how that should go whatsoever.
Thank you, Norma.
So, like I said, I've been in this field a long time, and I want to thank you, Karen, for your response. Because in 2009, the Washington Post and the New York Times came down to do an interview because Pennington County had the highest rate of rape than any other county in this nation. That's Los Angeles, that's Las Vegas, that's Chicago. How can we have our numbers so high? And so, so they interviewed me, because I've been in the field for so long, and interviewed the state's attorney from Pennington. And at the time he said, and I don't want to say his name because I think a lot of him, you know, it was Greg Peterman. I really think a lot of Greg Peterman. And you know, he does a good job. But his response to them was, our numbers are high because they trust us. And he meant Native American women, because of all of the victims, over 90% of them were Native women. And so my response, they asked how I responded to that. And my response, it remains the same today. He said, they trust us. And I said, how can we trust them when we have almost a zero prosecution rate of Native American women who are being sexually assaulted? And we have over a 90% declination rate. And I've seen it over and over and over again. And your case, sadly, is not an isolated case. You know, we're working with a woman that severely beaten. It's constant. The guy should be in prison. Is it 5 times you've been charged with domestic violence, then it becomes a federal crime because it shows you there's a pattern, you're habitual. His was more than 5 times. He should have been in jail. Her and her children are on the lease, but they wouldn't make him leave. They made her and those kids leave in the middle of winter. That's just one case. So I validate what you say. And it's hard to hear this. And not every police officer is bad. There are excellent police officers there. And I am glad there are people here that are gonna be fighting for us in the legislature, because nothing is gonna change this. And this is the place for this to be heard. We're all activists, we're all out there in the community. This is the place, this is the time. We have got to make a change in this community for our people. Because as Native women, we're a part of this community. We originate from here. So this is the time. We need to wake up. We need to help each other. We need to come together to make a change. So I call the network, because what I think it is a part of is the training of public safety. You've got to make sure they're trained so they know what they're doing, so that every police officer responds the same. So we need the training, so I call the network who does their training. Public safety in Rapid City does their own training. And we can't get in there to help, to co-train. We need to open that up. So I just want to thank Karen for sharing.